Maybe right now you've just had a beer, a glass of wine, or maybe you once had a drink at a party and barely even remember it. But what's strange is that the moment you raise that drink to your lips, you're repeating one of the oldest behaviors your ancestors ever had. It's older than writing, older than agriculture, and it may have started long before modern humans even existed. Our relationship with alcohol didn't begin in bars, and it didn't begin in ancient wine cellars either. It may have started around 10 million years ago, on the forest floor of Africa, when one of our ancient ancestors picked up a piece of fruit that had been fermenting for too long. In 2014, a biologist named Robert Dudley introduced a famous theory in his book, The Drunken Monkey. He suggested that it all began with fruit falling onto the forest floor and naturally fermenting over time. Yeast would turn the sugar inside the fruit into ethanol, the chemical we know as alcohol. Ancient ancestors that ate the fruit may have felt slightly intoxicated, even though they had no idea what was happening. But their brains remembered the feeling. Over millions of years, our ancestors didn't just tolerate alcohol. Their brains slowly evolved to enjoy it and actively seek it out as part of their natural instincts. Fermented fruit often contained more calories, and the smell of alcohol helped our ancestors find ripe food more quickly in the jungle. Over millions of years, the individuals that were better at eating fermented fruit had a better chance of surviving. Which means part of the reason our ancestors are still here today is because they became surprisingly good at finding and eating fermented fruit on the forest floor. In other words, humans didn't simply learn to like alcohol. Our brains evolved to be attracted to it millions of years ago. And when you really think about it, that's actually a little disturbing, because every time you feel the urge to pour one more drink, it might not just be personal preference. It could be an ancient instinct still living inside the modern human brain. And if you've ever wondered why humans are so drawn to the feeling of being drunk, comment 1. In 2018, archaeologists excavating an ancient cave near the city of Haifa discovered something incredible. The site, called Rakafet Cave, had once been used by a group of hunter-gatherers known as the Natufians around 13,000 years ago. And then the researchers found something completely unexpected. Inside stone mortars carved directly into the cave floor, scientists discovered traces of barley that had been soaked, sprouted, and fermented. In other words, it was beer. But the craziest part is that the Natufians still didn't know how to farm at that time. They weren't growing barley yet. They had to gather wild grains from nature by hand. Which means humans may have learned how to make beer before they even learned how to grow food. This completely changes the way we think about human history. For a long time, scientists believed that humans first had to settle down, develop agriculture, and build villages, and only then did they invent beer. But the discovery at Rakafet Cave suggests the opposite may have happened. These people were still hunter-gatherers. They had no cities, no farms, and were constantly moving from place to place. Yet they already knew how to ferment grains to create alcohol. Around 12,000 years ago, in what is now modern-day Turkey, humans built a mysterious place called Göbekli Tepe. Massive stone pillars weighing dozens of tons were arranged in perfect circles, covered with carvings of animals and strange symbols. What confused archaeologists for years was that the people who built it were still hunter-gatherers. So why would they cooperate to create such a gigantic structure? Later, researchers discovered large stone basins containing traces of fermented grains. And that led to a shocking theory. Maybe Göbekli Tepe was a place where people gathered for rituals, feasts, and to get drunk together. One of the most fascinating debates in human history is this: did humans begin farming to make bread or to make beer? A famous archaeologist named Patrick McGovern, widely considered one of the world's leading experts on ancient alcohol, believes the answer may actually be beer. According to him, making bread is far more complicated. Beer, on the other hand, is much simpler. You only need to soak grains in water and let fermentation happen naturally. And, more importantly, the euphoric feeling alcohol creates may have been a far stronger motivation than simply discovering another new food source. If this theory is true, then alcohol did not appear after civilization. It may have been one of the very things that helped create civilization in the first place. It's possible that the desire to gather together, hold rituals, feast, and drink alcohol as a group was what pushed humans to stay in one place longer, grow more grains, and cooperate on a much larger scale. In other words, the drink sitting in your glass today may have helped create the first villages, the first agriculture, and eventually the entire modern world we live in today. By around 7000 BC, humans were no longer creating alcohol by accident. They were beginning to truly understand how to make it. At the ancient village of Jiahu in China, archaeologists discovered pottery jars containing traces of a fermented drink made from rice, honey, and fruit. And what's remarkable is that this was not some random mixture. The ingredients had been carefully selected and intentionally combined to create better flavor and a more stable fermentation process. By the time of ancient Egypt, beer was no longer just a drink for entertainment. It had become an essential part of society itself. The workers who built the pyramids laboring under the brutal desert heat were often paid in beer, sometimes receiving around 4 to 5 liters a day. That sounds insane today, but at the time, it actually made perfect sense. Water from the Nile River was often unsafe to drink directly, while the brewing process helped kill many dangerous bacteria. In a way, beer was cleaner than water. And on top of that, it also contained calories and nutrients that gave workers energy to survive long days of labor. So in ancient Egypt, a cup of beer was not just alcohol. It was payment, a safer source of hydration, and a form of food that helped sustain an entire civilization. For the people of ancient Egypt, beer did more than just help humans survive. It also carried deep spiritual meaning. They believed beer was a gift given to humanity by Osiris, which is why it appeared in almost every part of daily life. Beer was used in religious rituals, placed inside tombs so the dead could carry it into the afterlife, and even treated as a form of medicine. Egyptian healers often mixed herbs into beer to treat everything from stomach pain to infections. That made beer something incredibly unique, a single drink that at the same time served as religion, medicine, culture, and even part of the economy of ancient society. And perhaps that was the moment alcohol truly became inseparable from human civilization. If you look back at this entire story, you begin to realize that alcohol has been part of human life far longer than we ever imagined. Around 10 million years ago, our earliest ancestors were drawn to naturally fermented fruit. Around 13,000 years ago, humans were brewing beer inside caves even before agriculture existed. Around 12,000 years ago, places like Göbekli Tepe may have become gathering sites for feasts and collective rituals. Around 9,000 years ago, the first intentional alcohol recipes appeared in China, combining rice, honey, and fruit in carefully planned mixtures. And by around 5,000 years ago, major civilizations like ancient Egypt were almost built around beer itself. The deeper you look into history, the more everything connects together. Alcohol did not simply exist alongside human civilization. It may have helped create civilization itself. If you enjoy strange stories about ancient humans, evolution, and the hidden secrets history never taught us in school, make sure to subscribe to the channel right now, because there are many more fascinating stories waiting ahead.